Hey, welcome to the November edition of the You Already Own It community call on Teams as a platform and sort of what to do next with Teams. So this is a really great topic. I'm super excited. And we've got Ken Nuebler from our team as well as Giles, who are going to be talking about Teams as a platform and its capabilities and power. So I'm super excited on this topic. Why don't you go ahead and advance the slide, Ken? So brought to you by your Cloud Strategist team. So the You Already Own It team is myself, Bob Ballard. I'm Principal Cloud Strategist and Director of Cloud Strategy here at Planet Technologies, along with Nia Giles, George Scott, Ken Nuebler, Scott Dowling, and Matt Nevins, as well as not listed on here, but we are cat herded by the amazing Mary Tucker, keeps us all in line, make sure we keep our commitments, and brought to you by the vision of Steve Winter, our VP, who's made all this possible. Thanks. Next slide. So Ken, I don't know if you just wanted to talk about the blogs real quick.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that people knew that there's blogs available on our GoPlanet website, and I just want to highlight these because obviously they're very timely, and they'll provide lots of background on what we're talking about today, especially since this is going to be a lot of information today, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about is in both of my Teams as a Platform 1 and 2. The first one goes over an intro of what Teams as a Platform is. The second one's more of a governance and what tools are available for governance. And then obviously AI Builder, something that we're going to be talking about today. Some good information about how that can be incorporated into Teams. Taking Teams to the next level, that's our latest blog by Pierre Eves. It kind of takes that approach of an organizational change management perspective on Teams as a platform. So definitely something to check out. And there's so many other blogs that are available there. Definitely take a look. Effectively Managing Change, SQL hybrid benefits, Microsoft licensing, coronavirus preparation from a technical perspective. So list goes on and on. Definitely some great stuff there. The list to the blog is down below. And if Microsoft keeps putting out some more information, I feel like I'll have enough information to put out a blog in the January timeframe for some more Teams governance and manageability, which we'll be talking about today. It's something that was just released, so they're still building the content on the website. So it's something that's very interesting to me because I was a former global admin for the state of North Carolina, and some of these things were some of the items that I was looking forward to seeing Microsoft fill in those gaps as we look at Teams as a platform.
Awesome. All right, so agenda, we're going to start with a little bit of an overview, talk a little bit about the available tools and what's new, especially some of the stuff that Ken was just referencing, as well as some other things as well. I will warn you, there's a lot of content here. We will be recording this, so if you don't catch anything the first time, feel free to watch it again. And then, of course, feel free to reach out to your Cloud Strategist team to have any further follow-up or dialogue about how we can help you with these activities. There's a number of programs from both Microsoft and the Planet team as well to get you jump-started on that. And then, of course, some reference links at the end. All right, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, there's going to be something for everybody today. So we're going to start off at the beginning of what Teams is and then move into the capabilities. And then the second half will be more technical. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's take a trip down memory lane real quick, kind of tell a little bit of story about how we got to where Teams is today, right? The first picture on your left, if you're an old timer, you might remember the VAX cluster or, VAX email, right? And apps have come a long way over the years. And typically they were purpose-built for one thing, one specific thing, and they only did one thing. And then we saw apps being developed on the desktop. Then obviously that went quickly to the web and then to the mobile devices. And then finally, to adding audio and video with the advent of web conferencing products like GoToMeeting and WebEx. And so really what we're seeing today is, Office 365 is much bigger than just one app, right? It's 20 apps and counting, apps to do everything. And so one of the things that Teams brings to this is you have to understand that, Office 365 is an ecosystem, and Teams is different because it's not just one app. It's the hub of all your apps and your collaboration. And that's the way we need to think about Teams as we move forward. I want to point out one thing on the bottom here, Evolve. We're creating a bot that should be released in the next pretty soon. And so that'll be a very great product for the folks that are using our Evolve product. And we look forward to deploying that app to your tenants soon. But before we go any further, in order to use Teams, the one thing we absolutely must do is kick Skype to the curb. And real quick, Skype's got to be gone, end of life, June 2021. So now's the time to start thinking about Teams as a platform. So Teams combines communication, collaboration, and business processes. Typically, organizations start with collaborations and communications. And when we say communication, I mean persistent chat, one long conversation, right? So that you can join and see the whole thread of history of that chat. Channel conversations, and that means many conversations, many topics. Live meetings, these are the webinar capabilities of 10,000 people in a webinar possibly, right? So if you're not familiar that Teams can actually do live meetings, that's something you need to be aware of, so as you don't need those GoToMeeting webinars anymore products. Room systems, voice over IP, PSTN conferencing. So now you're getting the picture that this is a communications service as well as a collaboration service. But what people are finally starting, and what Microsoft is finally pushing now, is the business process side of this. So one of the reasons why this is so important is because in the past and if you don't know this, Teams is built on SharePoint on the back end as far as the content repository, right? So in the past, people built their business processes in SharePoint. That was the workflow engine for them to use. And Teams are really, what we're seeing is the Teams are no longer, Team sites and are no longer being built in SharePoint. They're being built in Teams because that makes more sense. And this is good from a permission standpoint. It's easier to navigate, knowing where the content is. And with that said, SharePoint's not going away anytime soon, but Teams will have a huge impact on where all the workflow processes are built moving forward. And that's really important to understand. That's going to be the theme of today, specifically in the area of workflows and business processes. So what we're going to talk about today is moving forward, business processes and apps can be developed directly into Teams, and that is what we're going to talk about today and how it is done. So we've talked about the communication, we talked about the collaboration. Now it's time to customize and extend Teams to the next level. That's what's all meant about Teams as a platform. It's not just one application. In fact, there's over 700 Microsoft Store. You can build apps with Power Platform, or you can actually use developer tools, and we'll talk more about that in a second. So you can move your processes now. This is the time to start really thinking about where your new processes are being built. It's not just SharePoint anymore. The goal is to stay in one tool for the majority of your day. And I can definitely tell you, I've seen that most of my days. I'm getting less and less email every day and more chats and conversations. And that's where I'm spending my day. And I'm telling you, I'm feeling a lot more productive these days by doing that. So what are the capabilities, the platform capabilities of Teams as a platform? Well, I'm sure you're already familiar with lots of these: notifications, tabs, rich cards, bots. And if you haven't tried the 365 QA bot yet, go take a look for that in the store, grab it and deploy it to your network, to your environments, because that is a great help for your service desk. Get that 365-QA bot and get it pinned to your side rail for your users to start using today. It will save service desk calls, and it's free and available right on the Microsoft Store. Personal apps, again, for automation and productivity, you can pin those right to the side rail of your Teams app. The Graph API is what kind of is the glue that holds all this together, right? So we're going to talk a lot about that glue and what that glue is called moving forward in the next few slides. And obviously, we're talking about Power Apps and SharePoint framework that bridge all these solutions together. So all together, these are the things that tie Teams as a platform together. And why would we want to use Teams as a platform? Well, it's the centralized hub for all use cases really going forward. Why would you go to multiple use cases when you can use one? Look at the following picture, right? You have a homegrown app with 2 manual processes and access to a SaaS solution, right? Well, moving forward, why wouldn't you just take those manual processes, automate them, build them into Power Apps, and with a connector to your software as a service. And oh, by the way, we can have single sign-on, so the user doesn't have to log in 3 times in that legacy way of doing things. Now, or when they're in Teams, they're already authenticated. All those applications are seamless. They don't have to re-authenticate 4 different times, and it's a seamless process. That's what we're talking about, and that's what's going to make it more.
Hey, it's Bob. I
Yeah.
just have one comment.
Sure.
So teams are already organizing themselves in your organization around the way people are working, right? So that's one of the big benefits to sort of trying to leveraging Teams as the platform to do this automation, right? It's already sort of aligning itself in the way that organizations, both within a department and across departments, are working together. So capitalize on that by having that as the framework for these business processes, which tend to align themselves exactly that way as well.
That's absolutely right, Bob. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the way that Teams is set up from a security perspective, right? From a security perspective, if you don't know this, Office 365 Groups is the security model behind Teams, right? And so that helps you keep security, permissions, everything very simple to use in Teams. And I think that's why a lot of users like Teams much better than SharePoint, because they don't have to worry about permissions. They don't have to worry about who has access to what, because if you're in that team, you pretty much have access for the most part without the talk of private channels. But security is consistent across all services. So when you look at that, things like DLP, right? So you set security, you can have one security product from your security posture go across multiple workloads. So it supports that model as well. And security is bound to the team. And that's going to be another theme that we're going to talk about as we talk about some of these new announcements. So Microsoft asked Forrester to do an impact statement on time savings and cost. And these are the top 3 things that they found, right? Information worker collaboration time savings was the biggest time saver and the cost savings right there, along with more effective and efficient meetings. And then application switching times, that's what we're talking about, is people going in and out, using 3 applications to accomplish 1 task. And so these are the drivers that are moving people to Teams as a platform. So what are the use cases? I'm sure some of you're already using these use cases, but HR is obviously huge, whether it be interviewing people or process for HR, support desks, crisis management. I can tell you we've used that one before in the past too. Procurement processes, organization-wide communications with things like live meeting, and there's company communications apps that are already out there. Boards and commissions types of meetings, back-end system, volunteer efforts. All these are great use cases. And then for first-line workers and field workers, we're seeing Microsoft work with vendors on products to help them build and support field workers. Things like the walkie-talkie app. If you haven't played with that, that's really cool. And it works. We tried it out a couple weeks ago, a coworker of mine, and we got that working. They're actually making headsets to work with that walkie-talkie app for hands-free access. And then room systems, obviously, right? Room systems that are no touch for these folks with the COVID that's going on right now. So lots of R&D going on in room systems and field devices for these field workers. But to understand your use cases and to get started, I won't spend much time on you. There's a couple questions you want to ask yourself. What problem are you trying to solve? Who are you solving it for? Is it for you specifically or for your organization or for a team? Do you need authentication? Should you integrate single sign-on? Should the entire app be in Teams or just some of it? What will the onboarding experience be like? How are you going to deploy this app to get it to your users? Those are things that you need to start talking about as far as preparing for building use cases out in the Teams platform. So how do you get started quickly? Well, Microsoft's created some really awesome, about, I think, 20 and counting apps currently. And the nice thing about these apps are they're plug and play, and they're already production ready. They're all available with code that's available right on GitHub. And there's templates that you can use to customize them yourself or use them right out of the box. And some of these examples include things like request a team. So if you're an organization that controls how teams are handed out, that app could be something that you might want to take a look at. company communications or HR support or remote support, new employee onboarding. Those are all production ready apps that are available on Microsoft's website right there down below where you see the full catalog of apps. So there's three kinds of apps in the Power Platform. There's the apps, the 700 apps that I mentioned that are available on Microsoft's web store. There's the app templates that I just mentioned that are production ready and ready for use. And you can see the available ones down below if any of those seem to be something you might be interested in. And then obviously the code from scratch. And this is where the developers come in. Microsoft is investing in the request process for apps and verification. So I know as a former global admin, I used to ask myself, how do I trust these apps? You know, who says these apps are safe and secure to use? Well, Microsoft is starting to address that, or they have addressed that. And they now have verification programs. They now visually put badges next to the apps if they've been verified by Microsoft. So things are getting much better there for these apps that are available in the store and the production ready apps. Oh, by the way, the apps that are available, the production ready apps, those are also built on best security practices as well, because Microsoft built those apps for us to use. Along with apps that are production ready and ready to use, there's team templates that Microsoft has created. So team templates was just released. When you create a new team, you can now say, is it a brand new team, or do you want to use an existing template? And some of these, like crisis management or event management or change management or incident response, may be something you might be interested in. So don't create the wheel from scratch. Try them out, kick the tires on them. If you don't like the way they work, you can actually modify them. They're customizable as well. So take a look at these because I think they could definitely save you some time. And they adhere to the latest compliance and security for standardization across these apps as well. So Microsoft's done a good job to create these use cases for you and these templates so you can get right out of the bat. Now, one great thing, and then if you don't like any of these, you can create your own team template from scratch. And one good thing that is one of the values of doing that is that you can lock down the security for this team the way you want it. So as, let's say you do the request a team app, well, you can say that request a team app grabs this team template that's already been set up from a security perspective the way you want it to be, right? So now you're rolling out a standardized template for teams from a secure perspective. And that's a huge value to customers. So they don't have to worry about creating the template incorrectly each time, or it's a standard process each time, right? So when you look at all these capabilities, TaaP has something for everyone, whether it's power users or developers. We mentioned the 20 plus services that are involved that are in the Office 365 portfolio. We talked about team templates, app templates, the 700 apps in the App Store, and then Power Platform, which includes Power Apps, Automate, Power Virtual Bots. Those are all items we're going to talk about in a second, but those are the real new development platform that we're going to be spending the next few slides discussing. Obviously, in-house apps, those are other tools that are available in your toolbox. And then for the developers, right, you can still use your old ways of developing code, right? Power Apps, you can use App Studio, JSON, C#, GitHub. All this stuff is now available to be integrated into GitHub from versioning control. So that's a huge thing. It's now being taken seriously as a production level development platform. So don't be afraid of it. It's definitely ready to go. And then these are the tool capabilities. These are some of the things you can do from a developing standpoint, messaging extensions. And we won't go too much into details in here, but one simple one right here, this webhooks and connectors, give it a try. Do a right click on a channel and you can connect up. Like for instance, I have a Teams as a platform channel that I try to share the latest and greatest information about. Well, you do a right click on a channel and you say connect to search Bing for anything that has the words, and you can list the variables that you want in there, and it can pull down everything you want on Teams or Power Automate or whatever the topic may be, and you can set the time of day it pulls it down, how often it pulls it down, and it pulls it and dumps it right into that channel so that people can see it in the conversation thread. So it's really a neat time-saving way to start using some of these tools for more productivity and have stuff being pulled to you versus always looking for it yourself. In the early days, I'm going to talk a little bit where we are today and where Teams as a platform's been, right? So it's really the Swiss Army blade knife of Office 365. It's not just one tool. It's a platform that can do pretty much anything. If you have an imagination to do it, you can build it in Teams. And again, it's all these applications. And in the early days, up until about, I'd say 4 months ago, all these apps were all very much standalone, right? Office 365 did its own thing. Dynamics did its own thing. Power BI was doing its own thing. These Power Platform tools that wasn't called Power Platform yet. They were all doing their own thing, but they were all very separate and disconnected. So what's changed? About 90 days ago, Microsoft, right after the between Inspire and Build conferences, I think it was the Build conference in August, they announced DataFlex. That was their first version of talking about how they're going to move forward with Teams as a platform. And DataFlex, unfortunately, they didn't keep the name. They renamed it Project Oakdale and Project Oakdale Pro. And I'll talk about what these are in a second here, because I know it's very confusing. But it's the first time that Microsoft really mentioned integrating the Power Platform and a light version of the Common Data Service, which is a relational database backend, which is kind of what feeds the Power Platform and feeds Dynamics 365, right? So we'll talk more about this in a second. But your app, it was the first time about really bringing these two platforms together into one platform to build applications on. And it will also allow Microsoft Teams platform. You can augment your services with context-specific information available from various Microsoft Teams APIs, like information about the Teams or channel or your app is installed in, and this is just the way that Microsoft's moving forward. So Project Oakdale, what it did for us was it provided the Common Data Service, which is really it's no more than it's the secure data store for Dynamics 365 and Power Platform. So in the past, if you wanted a Common Data Service you couldn't get it in Teams for any matter. You'd have to buy a Power Apps license or you'd have to buy a Dynamics license. So this was huge. And now they announced that it would become included with your Microsoft Teams licensing. And then they announced the Pro version of this, which is basically a rebranding of Power Apps licensing and Dynamics licensing with the CDS here. So the Common Data Service. But unfortunately, this naming convention was only going to sit around for a little bit. And so what they just announced last week is all this is now called Microsoft Dataverse. So what's new? Microsoft Dataverse is the new name for Common Data Service. It's a sophisticated and secure data store that powers Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform, and it's been renamed Microsoft Dataverse. So what is it? It's the glue that holds together Teams to the other Power Platform products. So things like Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, Azure. And going forward, the Power Platform applications will be written in other, you can even use this API of Dataverse, this glue, to connect to other applications as well. So this is the glue that's going to be moving forward. It's going to provide us more development capability. It's going to provide us the way to do Power Platform actually in Teams as a platform. So this is just a recap slide. I know this is very confusing. If you see references to this, and I think my blog still references it because it was when I was built, DataFlex or Project Oakdale is now Dataverse for Teams. CDS or DataFlex Pro or Project Oakdale Pro is now just Dataverse. The whole Common Data Service backend is called Microsoft Dataverse. So what the exciting part of this is now you're able to create a relational database inside of Teams for no additional cost. Now it comes with some limitations, and we'll talk about those in a second. But the great part is it's integrated with the Power Platform, and it's included in your Microsoft licensing. And it's just a simplified Common Data Service. So you can create model-driven apps, you can create Canvas apps right inside of inside of Teams from here on out. Now, if you have reasons that you need, we'll talk about that in a second. But if you need more capabilities, the Dataverse you can upgrade to that at a future point in time. So what is Dataverse? What problem does it solve? Well, it gives you the capability of doing relational database inside of Teams for no additional cost. Model-driven apps are not available yet, but they will be, and we don't have a date on that yet, but that will be coming. You can now natively, right inside of Teams, create a new Power App, create a new Power Automate, create a new Power Virtual Agent right inside of Teams. And it's that native feeling and keeping you inside of Teams so you don't have to go anywhere else to do these things that's so interesting about this new announcement. When you create these apps now inside of Teams, they're also out of the box responsive. So resizing of windows or instant mobile access is now available. So imagine this, right? You create a Power App to create contacts or inventory for the field, and it's in Teams, and it's immediately available for your field workers on their phones with the Teams app. You don't even need the Power App to do that, right? So out of the box, mobile access is there available. You can package this up, and you can have multiple different ways to deploy it. And so this is a huge thing for Power Apps and for the development of Power Apps in the Teams environment moving forward. What can't you do in Dataverse for Teams yet? Again, this is the Teams version of Dataverse, right? It can only be accessed in Teams. So in other words, if you create the Dataverse or the Common Data Center or the Power App in Teams, it has to stay in Teams. You cannot move that app to SharePoint, for instance. And why would you really? You wouldn't need to do that. There's no integration right now with the Power Apps portal. We hope that that's coming, or at least some option to do that. If you need that today, you'd have to go and buy the Power Apps licensing to get that accomplished. We talked about it being tied only at the team level. Premium and custom connectors are not included, so you can't connect to premium and custom connectors in Power Automate inside a Dataverse for Teams. There's still some questions about storage. So if you have a background in dynamics and environments and how environments are created with Power Apps, those are expensive resources and they do require a different kind of storage. So some of the questions that still have to be answered, and they're giving us some management tools of those. And I'll talk about that in a second, but how are you going to manage storage moving forward of those environments and who can create them? The good news is we have an answer for that and it's coming up in a couple slides. And you can always grow to the paid version of Dataverse if needed. So if you outgrow some of these limitations right here, like how many rows of data you have, or if you need to create this outside of a team environment, or you outgrow your team environment, it needs to be in a standalone application. You can certainly do that. Or if you want to move it into Dynamics 365, you can always upgrade the Dataverse for Teams app at a later time. So that's good. So what they're talking about here is, imagine this, if I have some global admins on the call today, you're thinking, and you know what it takes and what it costs to build environments in your tenant from a Dynamics and a Power App standpoint. Think about everyone in the world having the ability to create their own environment in Teams. Well, it satisfies some things, but it also causes problems with storage. So we'll talk about how we manage that in a couple slides. The great thing about Dataverse and Teams is the security, right? Because we talked about this earlier on in the program, that security is tied to the same method and the same permission bases as the team itself, right? So team owner, member, guest security, all that is tied. So the security that you build on Dataverse for Teams is the same security model, right? So you don't have to worry about giving out security roles or anything like that. So once you create this Power App, you've got the security already built in for it, which is really cool. Now, for people who need more security or more customized security or row level security or field level security or legacy authentication, you can upgrade to the Dataverse version. So that's something that can be done as well for those advanced users that need advanced security. And now here's the thing that I'm pretty excited about as a former global admin. We mentioned a while ago, I think on a previous announcement at one of our You Already Own It, it's about the Center of Excellence. The Center of Excellence is a framework for governance in the Power Platform Admin Center. And so that framework and that implementation allows you to create a governance framework for managing Dataverse teams. I mentioned before that every time you create a new Dataverse team, it's going to create a new environment. And the question is well, how are you going to manage those environments? Well, the great thing is that Microsoft has created or integrated in the Center of Excellence with the Power Platform and the ability to manage these Dataverse teams and environments, specifically the environments. So what they've done is, and now they've taken an approach that it's kind of more of a reactionary approach, but it still can be used, I think, effectively. They've taken an approach where it's actually a built-in approval process. So a team, well, first of all, you can control who can create team environments, right, from a Dataverse standpoint. But if you wanted the Wild West, and you wanted anyone to be able to do this, you could actually, Microsoft's built in an approval process into the Power Platform that allows people to send in an approval. The admins then go in and see, they get a notification to go ahead and approve or reject it. They have 7 days to approve or reject it. And then there's an automatic cleanup process. So it's really nice integrated solution moving forward for these Dataverse for Teams environments that are coming up. And this is all going to be available in the Power Platform Admin Center. And then if you want to do reporting on it, the Center of Excellence has Power BI templates already built in place to report on usage, who's using what, all kinds of metrics on the Dataverse for Teams environments. So this is a really nice feature. It's just been announced. I'm not sure, I don't think it's available yet, but it should be available any day now. But it has been announced, and so this is something for those global admins to definitely take a look at as soon as they can. This kind of just shows you that the welcome email. So as soon as the end user requests the team a Dataverse environment, they'll get a welcome email saying, hey, this is a limited capability. Please be mindful. What is your business justification? You have 7 days to respond. If you don't, we're going to wipe out the environment. I'm not sure if this is customizable yet. We don't have that level of detail yet, but certainly I would think it would be. But here's the automated approval process that Microsoft's built into the Teams environments from the Power Platform admin portal. So we're pretty excited about this, that finally there'll be some way. I'm glad that they announced this capability early on with the release of Dataverse environments being created in Teams. This is just a first look at what a relational database would look like in Teams, just to kind of visualize what it would look like. It looks very much like a list, but the difference here is that it allows things like lookups for entities and relationships between entities. So this is a pretty big thing, because in the past, again, if you wanted this capability of the common data service in Teams, you couldn't get it. You had to go to Power Apps to get it outside of Teams, or you had to go to Dynamics to get it and pay a price, for a license to do this. So if you can live with the light version of CDS or Common Data Service, then this could be a very powerful tool for many use cases in state government. Again, just some pictures of what Power Apps in Teams looks like. If you haven't seen it, you can see that native feel of what it looks like. You see how Power Apps is pinned here to the right rail, the side rail. This one threw me for a loop. Power Automate was just released for Teams last week, and I kept looking for it and kept looking for it. Well, guess what? It still says Flow. So if you go looking for this, make sure when you sign in to your the store, when you go to the store here and under these 3 dots, and you're looking for Power Automate, look for it as Flow, and it will definitely you'll find it, and then you can actually try it out. By default, by the way, on Flow and Power Automate and Power Apps integration, when you open it up initially, you'll be like, oh my God, where's all my stuff? It'll only show you by default what you've created in Teams. If you just hit the dismiss button, or you'll figure it out pretty quickly. I think it's the dismiss button. It'll show you everything on the Power Apps or the Power Automate platform as well. So it really does look at the two very differently, right? It shows you typically what's in Teams versus what's on the actual back-end Power Platform, because it is built in the team. But you can actually see, Power Apps and Power Automate all the Power Automates you've done, not just the ones for Teams, if you could take the extra step. Now, if you're going to pin it on the side rail, don't forget to make sure you pin it so you don't lose it after the first time as well. That's another little gotcha if you haven't done that yet. Power Virtual Agents, I'm going to try to speed up a little bit here because we're starting to get a little bit long on time. But certainly Power Virtual Agents are something to take a serious look at. They can save you time. They provide self-help. They're helpful for quickly responding to issues, and they're available 24/7. I am by no means a developer, but I can tell you I did create an HR bot very quickly in about 20 minutes by using this step-by-step guide. So do a Google search on Power Virtual Agents and take a look at this HR tutorial. I thought it was pretty useful. I think within 20 minutes, you give it a little bit more time to customize it, but you could certainly have a usable bot ready to go for your HR team. If you want to learn more about how to build bots, is a great Ignite session here too. Unfortunately, and I tried to get an update yesterday, Power Virtual Agents are not available in the government cloud yet. I'm hoping that will happen very soon. And as usual, Microsoft has created some already pre-built production-ready bots. So don't start from scratch. If you want an HR bot, any one of these bots, take a look at those, see if they work for you. You can always customize it, and it might provide a nice base for the type of thing you're trying to do, and then you can just build on it, possibly like this frequently asked questions bot. This is just kind of what Power Virtual Agents looks like in design mode inside of Teams. Again, we're doing all this development inside of Teams, which is this big announcement that we're talking about this last week, is Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agent, all inside of Teams. I'm going to stop right here and let Nia talk a little bit about this because she just wrote a blog on this, and let her talk a little bit about the use cases for AI Builder in the Power Platform. Nia? Yeah, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Do you hear echo?
No, it sounds good to me.
Okay. So I'm Giles. I'm a cloud strategist with Planet Technologies, part of Bob Ballard's team, working closely with Ken. As Ken mentioned, I already have a blog on this AI builder that I will post shortly to the chat here. So basically what this AI builder is built on the strength of Azure AI capabilities, and basically it allows for integration of AI into both Power Apps and Power Automate. And when I say Power Apps, it means both the model-driven apps and also the Canvas apps and Flow. So basically what Microsoft is trying to do is to make Azure AI more user-friendly so that you can create Azure AI models within low-code type modeling, so that you don't have to have experienced data scientists or developers working for you. Any business user would be able to use the AI capabilities and cognitive services and integrate that with their Power Apps and eventually use it within their teams or channels. So some examples of this that would be useful are, so as I mentioned, these there are two types of AI models. There are the custom built ones, and or the custom AI models, and there are the pre-built models. For the custom AI models, you would still have to do some building and training of your models, but it's not as extensive as you would in Azure AI. And then there are the pre-built AI models where you don't really have to do any kind of building or training. It's just right out of the box. You can start using those. Some examples of the pre-built models are, for example, you can scan receipts for your if you have a expense type report that you have to submit to your manager, you would just take a picture of the receipt of whatever you have, like if you go to a restaurant or something, and that would automatically extract certain fields from that receipt and submit it to your expense reporting system. And that's already built in. There's nothing more to do there. You can just create a Power App, select the receipt processing and the work would be done. There's also the invoice processing. That's another one that's right out of the box. But if you need to do things like detecting, say, images from a picture, then you would use the custom AI models. And that's where you have to actually build and train the models, which means that you would have to upload, for example, 50 pictures at a minimum to be able to train that model. So just in short, this AI builder just came out, late last November, and all of these models are rolling out gradually. The licensing for this is an addition to the licensing of Power Apps, so it's not included. But once you get the licensing, it is available from the Power App Studio.
Thanks, Nia.
So Nia, it's Bob. I just wanted to bring up one thing to put some context for folks on the call, right? So when I heard this, the first thing that came to my mind, we have a lot of government customers at Planet. I think many of them are on this call right now. One of the things that governments do are inspect things, right? So in my mind, I immediately went to this idea of object detection, et cetera. So if I'm taking pictures as part of an inspection, I can actually train the AI to recognize things like a health inspection that says the distance of the sink from another thing, or the stove, or the gas line, or if it's building inspections, et cetera. We can start teaching these models these things and have it actually automatically be detected through these systems. Right. So there's tons and tons of other classifications, but just saying, hey, there's a lock on the door, if that's something you need to inspect, et cetera, the ability to train things to detect these types of scenarios becomes super easy. And these inspection applications can be updated and modeled by citizen developers or mid-level kinds of developers, as opposed to the most senior developers in your organization, becomes very powerful. So just one example that comes to mind.
Yeah, I just wanted to also mention that there is a free 30-day license for this. So if anyone wants to start, playing around with these models, it is available for free for 30 days.
Yeah, so as a former government employee, I think this is one of those things that's going to revolutionize the way that we do forms processing, or, any kind of workflow process in state government. And now that you have Power Platform with the ability to build Power Apps right inside of Teams, you can build those line of business applications to do this with using AI Builder as well. So, you can kind of see end to end an entire process being built in Teams and being so much more efficient than we have been in the past. So this one's an exciting object. The last real announcement I wanted to make was last week, Microsoft made an announcement about Teams apps for meetings. And what this really means is Microsoft is now going to focus on, again, they're trying to keep people inside the team meeting, inside of Teams all day long, without having to toggle back and forth between apps and their Teams meetings. So what they're trying to do here is talk about meeting lifecycle. So not only is a meeting a point in time thing that you go to and that's the end of it, right? Microsoft's approach now is, hey, if you're preparing for this meeting, why not prepare in the meeting itself? During the meeting, why don't you take the notes in the meeting? And after the meeting, there should be post things that you do as well, right? So Microsoft is starting to build this whole life cycle capability with lots of different apps, and they announced 20 new apps last week, specifically around the area of task management or surveying or project management. So if you have those applications, definitely take a look at Teams apps for meetings. It's a new announcement as of last week. And again, the whole theme there is all about the life cycle of the meeting, not just being point in time, but actually an ongoing thing, right? It's the work you do before the meeting starts, what happens during the meeting, and what happens after the meeting, and then keep going back to that meeting. And this obviously is very helpful in recurring meetings where you can keep all your content in one location possibly, as well as the tools that you use for that meeting. So if it's very task driven, then build those apps right into the meeting so that you don't have to go to different places to get those apps. and I'm not going to go into too much detail because we're running long, but this is kind of what the pre-meeting experience looks like. You're going to have the ability to add tabs up here and applications up here. And then let's say you want to do a survey, you can start building out the survey. And this follows the same security as your Teams meeting. So, if you give out the permission as a presenter, you'll have that ability, or team owner, you'll have that ability. During the meeting, the apps show up on the side, or they can be presented in the middle as far as a question that pops up. So much more thorough meeting application integration into the meeting experience. I think we're going to see a lot more on this as we move forward through the year. And so not only are there going to be these third-party apps, but there's certainly client SDKs available, software development kits that'll be available for developers to create their own apps as well, if that's something that you choose to do. Then the post-meeting experience, again, after the meeting's over, you can open up the meeting and still see the results or see the meeting content that you went over in the meeting. So where are you on your Teams as a platform journey? You need to start thinking about this and think about, Microsoft is investing a lot in Teams as a development and app building tool. If you're thinking about upgrading your on-premise SharePoint servers or workflow with the idea of moving them to SharePoint Online or Teams, take a break, take a second, think about this. Do you really want to if Microsoft is focusing on developing all this in Teams, would some things be better developed in Teams, right? So take a deep breath, look at where Microsoft's going with development in Teams as a platform. Think about whether you want to continue down the SharePoint path or if you want to make it more into the Teams as a platform. We're here to help have those discussions. And, it's clear that Microsoft's moving to Teams as a platform, and that may be your correct path moving forward, but we don't know your business case until we talk about it. So to get there, though, obviously you need to have, strong admin controls in your Teams environments. Then obviously, if you're going to be doing Power Platform development, you need to be thinking about setting up the Center of Excellence, which is a free governance framework. And then obviously you can start looking at launching and deploying these production-ready apps, team templates, Power Virtual Agents, custom in-house development, and then obviously that all drives new business processes. First thing you need to do is get off of Skype, though, if you're on Skype. Just had to say it one more time. So here's the commercial part, right? We're here to help. And we have a couple engagements that we'd love to work with you on. Basically, there's two engagements. There's a Teams meeting engagement and an apps and solutions engagement. And we're going to be, what these two engagements do is talk about the same thing we talked about today, Teams as a platform, and the modern meetings envisioning sessions to help you crosswalk your use cases over to these tools. Everything from meeting rooms to apps and solutions development, and talk about app governance and also adoption and rollout, right? So that's what these two workshops are all about. And they typically drive other discussions around organizational change management, end user adoption, governance, application in a days, production pilots. So if you're interested in some of those production apps that we talked about that are already ready to go, but you want to customize them, we can certainly work with you on that and do some work with over the shoulder with you on customizing those apps that we talked about today, or Teams templates, or if you're interested in app in a day. With that, I want to just close and say thank you very much for your time today. I know it was a lot of information. Sorry if some of it was confusing. It is confusing, and I wish you all a very happy and safe Thanksgiving, and we look forward to talking to you next month.
Are there any, before everybody drops, are there any questions out there? Because we do have 8 minutes or so. If anybody has any questions, we've got the right folks on to answer them.
Will the slide be shared? Are there
yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. So we can share the slides as well as access to the recording as well.
Okay.
But there's a lot of great links that are hot in these slides, so we'll make sure that those get shared as well.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions out there?
This was a great meeting. I just want to thank you folks for everything that you do.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thanks for attending, and we know it's a busy week. It's a little crazy with a short week, and I thank everybody for taking an hour out of their day. I think this is a super important topic. and I'm glad you folks could join. I would just leave with one final thought, right? And that is, so Microsoft's been talking about this world of citizen developers so I spent 14 years at Microsoft before I came to Planet. I had this conversation for close to 20 years. For the first time, really, right? I feel like the capability to deliver the true citizen developer is being delivered with the solution, and the controls to make sure that IT is okay with what it makes are showing up in the tools as well, right? So this world where your business users can make the applications that make their jobs better are finally here and can be delivered through the solution. So it's pretty exciting. It's going to be a fun ride over the next few years. Feel free to reach out to my team. We're happy to talk to you about the cloud strategists that you guys are already working with. We're happy to talk to you more about this. And I will echo Ken's sentiments. Have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy time with your families, and let's get this stuff going. We're happy to help you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.